grind our teeth, some of the mercury is released as a vapor and we inhale it. Panorama has uncovered a growing body of scientific evidence which shows ominous links between the mercury from our fillings and serious illnesses. We also reveal an uncomfortable background of complacency and ignorance within the British dental establishment and apathy in government, which is helping mask the truth about the dangers of the poison in your mouth. These men are handling old amalgam tooth fillings for recycling. Once removed, what had lived inside our mouths for years is suddenly treated as the dangerous poison it's always been. Mercury is so toxic that at certain levels it drives people mad, but even the tiniest amounts are regarded as unsafe. At lower levels, and no one quite knows how low they are, the metal attacks the brain and the central nervous system, producing symptoms which include nervousness and irritability, lack of concentration, loss of memory and self-confidence, mood swings, anxiety, depression, fatigue and insomnia. Because there can be other causes for these symptoms, no one has associated dental amalgam with them. But suddenly the familiar quicksilver of our youth is beginning to look dirty.
If you have something that's being put in your mouth that you can't dispose of in a wastebasket without breaking environmental protection laws, there's no point in keeping it around. There's no point taking that type of risk. There's no point in exposing people to any level of mercury toxicity if you don't have to.
The epidemiological evidence thus far, and every other bit of evidence that we've seen, not just ourselves but the scientific experts and the toxicologists, points to amalgam being as safe as any other material.
Mercury is a poison. There's no safe level. The World Health Organization has determined that. And so how can we continue to implant that into people's teeth?
Dentists have been using amalgam for over a century, convinced of its safety. The mercury is used to bond silver and other metals together to make a cheap, efficient and durable filling. Yet no one has proven that when the mercury goes into our bodies that it is safe. The dentists have always assumed it was safe because there were no identifiable side effects. But dentists may not have been the right people to look for the subtle but dangerous symptoms of low-level mercury poisoning. Supposing there have been side effects, but of the kind only doctors are qualified to recognize. Has the evidence always been there? Tonight, we examine the new scientific clues that place amalgam firmly in the dock on suspicion of causing harm to humans. It's a case where both sides, believers and non-believers, are fundamentally divided on even the most basic issues. Amalgam's most vehement support comes from the British Dental Association, the professional body to which most dentists belong. They run a service which includes giving their members an up-to-date scientific advisory service. John Hunt is the chief executive and Peter Gordon the scientific advisor. They do no original work, but review others' studies. Is amalgam safe?
In a word, yes.
No doubt about that at all?
No doubt about it at all.
Is there anybody it's not safe for?
There may be a small percentage of the population with an allergy to amalgam, but it really is very, very small. In fact, less than 50 worldwide in the last 100 years.
So it must be 99.99% safe?
Yes, in our opinion.
To these tissues. In fact, it was in all the tissues. Now, the dental profession said that, well, it's a sheep, it chews too much, they grind a lot, they regurgitate their food. It's not a good example. Here.
So they repeated the work with monkeys and found again the mercury had spread.
There's other body tissues that don't light up on this image, which are also high in mercury concentration, but not as high as these tissues.
So does the liver show up? Like in the sheep, we had our liver that showed up really well.
Well,
Furthermore, they discovered that even small amounts of mercury from amalgams damage the kidneys of the sheep. When you look at all the current scientific evidence, what do you think it's trying to tell you?
It tells me very succinctly that there's a chronic low-dose exposure to a toxic heavy metal, that 80 to 85% of the industrialized world has this metal implanted in their teeth, and it's a situation of timed release poisoning.
But animal studies were one thing. What science now had to prove was that mercury from fillings in human beings was a major source of the body's intake of the metal, and that this mercury not only accumulated but stayed inside the body's most sensitive organs. Well, they cracked that one here at the University of Arizona. The university's Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology is headed by the world-renowned Professor Vaskin Aposyan.
The study that we're going to be doing involves a mercury that is in your body that was emitted originally from the amalgams in your mouth. What we're going to do
He used these tablets to draw out mercury in the body's sensitive organs.
This is the best mobilized.
Students volunteered to take part. For over a century, dentists believed mercury from fillings didn't even enter the body.
Amount of mercury that comes out in your urine for the next 6 hours after you take these 3 tablets.
But Aposyan's results, published 2 years ago, were an astonishing rebuttal. They showed that no less than 2/3 of the mercury in the body came from tooth fillings.
I'm worried that the amount of of mercury coming from dental amalgams that we're putting in the mouths of young children today might be harmful to them as far as affecting their learning abilities, their performance abilities, and I'd hate to think that 20 years from now we will have hurt some of these children when we could have prevented it by proper scientific research, and that is what we must do now.
The professor simply doesn't know if enough mercury from fillings enters the body to do harm, but nor is he waiting to find out.
I'd hate to see amalgams in the mouth of my grandchildren who are 5 years and 8 years of age now when there are better materials, and I think there are better materials that are now available.
And safer.
And safer.
Are you aware of the work of Professor Aposyan, Professor of Molecular and Cellular Biology at the University of Arizona?
No.
Not at all. Did you know that he has shown that 2/3 of the mercury excreted from the human body comes from dental amalgams?
No, I didn't know that.
Isn't this, gentlemen, the kind of document that ought to be on your desks?
Yes, I'm surprised it isn't in the bundle that we have got, but nevertheless, I think that if it were, and if you'd produced it, we would have had a look at it and asked our experts to have a look at it and review the scientific methodology and the interpretation of the findings. We need to have a look at these papers, and certainly, routinely we do. For this one, we appear to have missed.
Now even more ominous evidence has been uncovered, this time about the dangers of amalgam's mercury in the most vulnerable and sensitive organ of all. It was a dentist in Los Angeles who first discovered from his examination of bodies here in the mortuary that mercury from dental amalgam travels to the brain, and the more fillings, the more it accumulates. Dr. David Eggleston is a dentist in California. His clients include Tom Cruise. His less glamorous work recently took him to the county morgue to investigate the relationship between dental mercury and the brains of the dead. Eggleston spent months studying the records and discovered that mercury from amalgams not only accumulates in the brain, but some of this poison stays in the skull for as long as 40 years.
I think there is legitimate concern regarding the mercury issue in dentistry. Mercury does release from the silver fillings. It does accumulate in the body.
Do you